13th of July, 4th Sunday of Trinity. Sermon on Amos chapter 7, verses 7 to 17, and Psalm 82. In this sermon I'm going to unpack part of the prophecy of Amos, a book we very rarely look at. It was written around the year 760 BC by Amos, who was from the southern kingdom, Judah, but was commissioned by the Lord to prophesy in the northern kingdom of Israel. We can glean from this book that Israel was in a period of prosperity, but, as Gordon Fee and Douglas Stewart write, a collusion of royalty, priests, prophets and judges became a wealthy aristocracy at the expense of the poor. Furthermore, the worship of the Lord had become perfunctory, full of ostentatious ceremony, but with scarcely any recognition of the true God and of his requirements for faithfulness and social justice. J.A. Motyer describes Israel as extremely religious, but it was a religion astray from the law of God, devoid of any spiritual benefit, incapable of protecting its devotees. Our passage highlights a confrontation between Amos and Amaziah, the priest of the king, Jeroboam. Amos has been inspired by God to prophesy that the king would die, and that Israel was to be exiled because of its unfaithfulness. His message was not exactly popular, and Amaziah ordered him to stop. "Go home to Judah and prophesy there instead," he said. Amos, however, reiterated his message in stark terms, suggesting that Amaziah's wife would be reduced to penury and prostitution, his children slain, the land measured and divided up, and Amaziah would be taken into exile together with the whole of Israel. This did indeed happen about 40 years later, when Assyria came against Israel. The same fate befell Judah at the hands of Babylon about 130 years after Israel's fall. Drastic as it sounds, this was an expression of God's mercy towards his chosen people. The Lord could not allow them to become indistinguishable from their pagan neighbours, neglecting the law and practicing syncretism, so that their worship became corrupted by aspects from other religions. Our future salvation depended on this action, for the Messiah was to be born into that nation. The parallels between ancient Israel and our own time and place are unavoidable, which makes this book of Amos particularly relevant to us. We are not, of course, in a covenant position with God, as was Israel, and so we cannot expect the same divine intervention in our political and social affairs. When, for example, religious people claimed that the disaster on 9/11 occurred because of immorality in the United States, they're misguided. God will indeed act when he brings his kingdom in its fullness, but that is not yet. In the meantime, we can only take comfort from knowing that the Lord does care about injustice and suffering, just as he did in his ancient kingdom of Israel. We see a strong hint of this in Psalm 82. In this psalm, God is addressing those whom he derisively refers to as gods. These are the religious and political leaders of Israel, its priests, kings and judges, who are perverting justice, favouring the corrupt, acting without understanding or knowledge. Through the psalmist, God orders these people in power to defend the cause of the weak and fatherless, maintain the rights of the poor and oppressed, rescue the weak and needy, and deliver them from the hands of the wicked. Sadly, in our modern world, we see this same corruption acted out in many ways. In our own country, the Grenfell Tower disaster has still not been addressed properly, with compensation for those who lost so much, and the removal of inflammable cladding from other tower blocks, which is causing the residents to live in fear. Victims of the post office scandal are still waiting for justice and reparation for all those lost years when they were under suspicion, even in prison, for crimes they had not committed. In both these cases, the real perpetrators seem to be above justice. Inquiries take place, but no action is taken. while powerless people such as carers who have inadvertently earned a few pence more than their allowance are prosecuted or faced with huge demands for repayment of their carer's allowance. Furthermore, in an echo of Amaziah's demand that Amos should stop preaching, we have politicians and sometimes religious leaders who deny what is obvious in order to further economic or political or plain misguided interests. Donald Trump and Nigel Farage, together with others, deny climate change so that they can pursue the use of fossil fuels with a clear conscience. Our own Prime Minister is cutting back on the clear need for overseas aid, purely for economic reasons, ignoring the fact that such aid ultimately benefits all countries, rich and poor. Similarly, he is reducing benefits to the disabled and failing radically to tackle child poverty, not seeming to realise that investing in the health and well-being of the whole population will pay dividends in the future. And in another move, motivated by economics, Donald Trump has issued an executive order disparaging the science of radiation protection measures, so that risks can be ignored, enabling nuclear power plants to be constructed indiscriminately. The danger to workers and surrounding populations is obvious. On top of all that, European countries, including our own, are planning to spend money they do not have on increasing weapons, including their nuclear capability, no doubt intending to take more money from the poor and disadvantaged to pay for it. Oh dear, this is all beginning to sound very gloomy and hopeless, so we need to look elsewhere in the Bible for some comfort and reassurance. Let us turn to another of our lectionary readings, Paul's letter to the Colossians, written to a people who lived in a situation not totally different from our own. The Roman Empire was well organised, but it was not a benign regime. It was built on an enormous population of slaves and depended also on a powerful military presence. People must have lived in fear much of the time, and poverty was widespread. Most of the Colossian congregation were Gentiles who would have experienced idolatry and godlessness, but they had been transformed by their faith in Christ, and Paul wrote to give them encouragement. We can take this encouragement for ourselves, for we too are Christians, believers in the victory of Jesus over sin and death. Paul is clearly delighted with the progress of these relatively new Christians, whom he commends for their faith and love, and he speaks of those qualities springing from the hope that is stored up for you in heaven. Later he spells out that hope more fully. For God has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us unto the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. As I've often said before, this isn't just pie in the sky when you die. It's for now. Our faith and our salvation give us confidence to face whatever life throws at us, so that we can weather the storms and rise above adversity. In order to develop and preserve this assurance, Paul tells the Colossians and us to allow the gospel to grow and bear fruit in us, and to increase our knowledge of the Lord. Becoming a Christian is not simply about resting on the assurance of heaven, but working with it, sharing our faith, deepening our understanding, and growing spiritually stronger. The people of ancient Israel, who remained faithful to the Lord, had to live through the calamities that came upon their land, just as we have to live through our difficult and challenging times. It's our faith that will see us through it all, and our faith that we must hold on to, even when all else seems to be failing.